Okay, it's day 63, and this is part one. If you've watched this Bruce and Nellie Ohr playlist that I've had, you've known that I've said the Ohrs were involved in exfiltrating secrets and then bringing scientists into the United States to do that. And here's an example where you have fusion that probably contained vessels that probably came from Oak Ridge, were exfiltrated to China, probably brought in a Chinese scientist, or maybe these were even plans from Bruce Ohr's dad way back when that then get moved back into Canada to be commercialized, right? So, and then here is similar stuff from Lawrence Livermore Lab with Russian scientists with Nellie Ohr. So that's the general gist. Fusion GPS is basically a combination of Russian and Chinese scientists. And I'm going to use Club K as an example of how that came together and how that switched over in 2009. But here's an article that came out first from a guy named Tim Pollock from the Daily Caller, a great investigative journalist. And what he said was our good old friend Charles McCullough, this is the attorney for Tony Shaffer, if you remember Charles McCullough, we did a show on him. He was the guy who was the 90 whistleblowers that we talked about. And one of the things is he dialed 811. McCullough dialed 811. You know what an 811 is now. That's, hey, this information is being exfiltrated to a foreign power. Now, the report to Congress was in July of 2015, where he said this was happening. This is why Comey made his big speech about, classified emails. But in actual fact, this happened in March, and this is why, this is why Braverman left the Clinton Foundation. He didn't want to be any part of this 811, as we've said before. Going a little bit further, if you combine this information, this is what I love about combining different articles. You look to see, well, who are the people involved in dealing with the Chinese? Here's a Chinese donor that's getting $2 million to Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton's server in this story is sending all information, like a shared Dropbox, the information that Andrew McCabe had set up on the server in 1998. Everything is being sent, right? And this is the period when from 2009 to 2013. So everything that's hitting that shared Dropbox is being forwarded to China, right? So let's drill down on who the likely suspects might be. If you pay a bribe, you probably want the emails and what's in the emails. And it's this guy. It's this Wen Liang, $1.2 billion and so forth. And he holds this company called China Ryland, R-I-L-I-N, Ryland Construction. Boy, when I hear construction, my ears perk up. And then I'm looking for ports right after I hear ports. And yep, Dadong near Shenyang Port, northern province of China, Chinese port near North Korea, our partner in exfiltration, right? And of course, add to the fact he's on the board of NYU, and that just tops it all off as far as bringing people in under a academic cover. Now here's China Ryland. Again, they do port construction, big, massive projects, big infrastructure projects, big electrical generation, and doing ports of trade. Now, this is going to be all over Africa, and it's going to tie into a weapons broker that we've talked about in the past, which is called the Queensway Group in Hong Kong. And we're going to talk about Bruce Ohr's connection to that group. But first, here is their U.S. subsidiary. Here, of course, is China Ryland in Dadong, but they also have this U.S. group, Now, as I'd said yesterday, I thought that that was going to be the Navy Yard in Brooklyn. Well, first of all, here's how close Dadong is to Pyongyang, right? And I don't know where the nuclear facilities are. I don't know where the Scott Klotzworthy's standing next to the rocket and so forth. But it's probably up here in the north, and you can see it just so close for moving Club K or nukes or whatever technology you wanted to. So we don't know where Club K is made, but I'm saying Club K went from the port of Wilmington, right, where it originally was with McCain doing a deal with Biden, 2009, to moving here in, I'm going to say in around 2011. I think the missiles are coming from Pakistan, but I think the infrastructure, the electronics, etc., are being actually made in Dadong and being exfiltrated as well as missile technology through to the North Koreans. Okay, so there's Dadong. Now here is where, I'll move this down a little bit. This is where U.S. Ryland is here in Williamsburg, part of near Brooklyn. And here's the Brooklyn Navy Yard, right? I actually think that they may have been involved in redoing the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I don't know that to be a fact. But when you redo these Navy Yards, there's plenty of places that you can do cutout businesses for manufacturing. Again, I'm not saying the full-scale manufacturing. I'm just saying proof of concept manufacturing happened at the Brooklyn Navy Yard for Club K. And of course, here's the infamous Holiday Inn that I stayed at on Union Street, on SEIU Union Street, when we had that little thing about a year ago. Okay, so here it is. There's the first look at this. They just built a new office building there. They tend to knock these buildings down when they've been involved in previous shenanigans. And now here's the new building. I think they've moved out of that building now. But now let's combine this with another article, which is what companies would have be the front for exfiltrating this technology. And we talked about Ryland. Here's Wang's company, Ryland Construction. But then also he owns this company called a soybean company, a soybean export business. And that just didn't make much sense to me. First of all, I think China imports the soybeans, right? And it just seemed like just didn't mix. It was the odd man out. Now, if you also look and see that there is a deal between Bob McDonnell here to facilitate the export of American soybeans through Virginia ports to China. When you hear Virginia ports and you hear Bob McAuliffe, if you've watched this series at all, the bells are ringing. You know who manages the ports. You know who manages the port of Norfolk. You know that's Cindy Grange. You know General Grange is the guy who likes to send weapons out of the port of Norfolk. So all the bells are going off for Club Cave right now for people who've watched this series before. Add to the fact that now Hong Kong, the key gun runner in Hong Kong, is this Queensway group. This is the Sampa. Now remember, Bruce Ohr has a potential Hong Kong intelligence background with a cover as a police officer there. I believe that the weapons for all this Africa trading and all these port deals that Ryland does all over Africa come through the Queensway group and come through an arms broker named Sam Pa. Okay, now there's some other interesting connections to this Wenli Wang. I don't know if this is his son or not, but he's involved in the greatest, as an electrical engineer in the greater Minneapolis area. Now, he may not be related at all, but it's an interesting company that he has on his profile, Via Technologies, which does electrical integration, right? And his resume cuts off here kind of curiously in 2008. I'll show you what they do in a second, but he comes to the United States as a nationalized student, I believe, through the University of Minnesota. He's kind of coming up through the Peter Stokes, Dennis McDonough chain of events here. We'll take it a little bit further. What VIA does systems, so they integrate all kinds of different systems. And what usually happens with systems is each one of these different systems has a controller board, much like the one you see over here, that's in the background over here. And you need to then have what's called an integration or a master module. For instance, each missile may have a controller board. I mean, refrigerators have controller boards, so why wouldn't missiles? That tell them to go up or down, where to aim, etc. But then you have to have a master system to say, hey, raise the lid for Club K. Now, the universal launcher module, we need to tilt it up. Now we need to talk to the missile itself to fire, etc. And all this information is coming down through satellite, through the X-band satellite. Again, the one's involved in channel logistics using the X-band on the Gannett satellites, right, to fire this thing off, right? So this is what they do. So I don't know if the Wangs are like the Awan name for Minnesota, where you bring them all in to do this integration, but you need somebody like this if you want to talk from a satellite to control a missile system, okay? So here, real quickly, I'll do the missile side of this. Now this is the Nellie Ohr Russian side. The missile system, as I mentioned, has 4 different missiles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Land attack missiles. This is that universal launching module I was talking about that needed to be worked in and integrated, etc. And if you go back in history and hear that, if you don't remember the different missiles from the video, there it is, the Club K missiles. It traces back to this Russian company called Tactical Missile Corporation. If you trace that back, this one's more closer to Moscow. But if you really go to the roots, it goes to this little town of Smolensk. I'll go one more here. Smolensk Aviation Plant. This is really Stalin's aviation plant. And remember, Nellie Ohr writes this novel, I mean novels and novels about Stalin and the Smolensk aviation plant, right? This is the key thing in the novel that Lakova wrote about getting the information out of Cambridge, out of Harvard, where she went to school, to Smolensk. She's kind of like the heir apparent of the person who was in the Cambridge novels, the Cambridge spy group. And her job's to get it to Smolensk so we can make this stuff in Smolensk. The long-range bomber, the knockoff of the B-29, was made here in Smolensk, right? The Tupolev, right? You might remember that episode. Here's beautiful Smolensk. It's right there. But from the world history point of view, it was a key stepping stone between Berlin and Moscow in Hitler's drive to take over the Soviet Union. You needed to go to Minsk and then Smolensk. You never want to, in Russian conversation, you never want to Minsk your Smolenskas, right? So they took Minsk, but a key turning point was Smolensk, and that's really why maybe it became such a big investment point for Stalin. He really believed in these key cities of Russian heroism, making Stalingrad, a big hub. And Leningrad, of course, is another big arms hub as well. Of course, that was kind of contested all through the war between the Russians and the Germans. But just know that this is Belarus now. Minsk is Belarus. This is Smolensk. In order to get secrets from one side of the border to the other now, you need an agent over here. You're going to pass it through that guy. It's going to be Sergei Millian. It's going to be him bringing scientists into Florida. And it's going to be people buying condos and so forth that he put in there. And then flying them occasionally up to New York or wherever they needed to go, Lawrence Livermore, to get the secrets. But then he's going to be the guy taking them to Smolensk. And I believe this is going to be where the missiles are made initially for Club K, but then they're going to move to be fabricated in China. Okay, so that kind of shows you, here it is a little bit more on the Dnieper River there, right, in Smolensk. And here's how close that is to Ukraine. You can see how close that is to Ukraine for different spy rings that you might have in Ukraine. If you had an Atlantic group, if you had a Dmitry Alperovitch, if you had a Russian spy network that you inherited, if you had a Chalupa, that would be easy to get to Smolensk from the Ukraine, right? Okay, so just saying that it may be that Chalupas brought the secrets over down here from more southern Ukraine, but you can see the small distance here from Minsk to Belarus, and I say Sergei Millian was the guy they made do those secrets first. Now, we can't find Sergei Millian. Is he dead? We don't know. We can see my previous videos on that. But this kind of shows you how it all kind of comes together. Ohr and Bruce Ohr in Fusion GPS as not just a spy organization or a takedown organization, but actually a system of exfiltrating secrets, infiltrating the scientists to take them, and then creating a private joint pay-to-play ventures in places like Canada and Australia.